So last time we did an interview like this, you were asking all the questions and you were in charge, and I kind of want to keep it that way. But guys, this is my friend Ryan. Ryan and I think we've known each other since JCC days, right? So
Yep.
that was pre-elementary, right? Or
Um,
then elementary.
it was, I mean, it might have been as early as kindergarten, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, we've known each other for a long time. And I think a few years back, we kind of reconnected on social media. And I think it was about a year ago that we did the interview on, Southern Tier, where I was at in my life at that point and kind of what I was attempting to do with my life. But since then, I've actually decided to build a website and kind of get the entire wellness community together and talking on what my belief of true wellness is, which is spiritual, mental, and physical, all kind of combined in a balance to make a truly healthy person. So I wanted to interview you, Ryan, because you've gone definitely through some trials and tribulations, and I'm watching what you're doing in your life today, and I'm just proud of you and I love watching it. So I just thought, what better person to interview than you?
Oh, that's what's up. I appreciate it, homie. It definitely means a lot. It's been a wild ride, like from the start till now. I never thought I'd be here. You never know what life's gonna look like, but you play the hand you're dealt and you play it as best you can.
Absolutely. So I guess let's start off by giving like a background of your life and kind of see where that takes us.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Well, again, my name's Ryan Danley. I am an explorer of life. I am the universe experiencing itself at this point in time from my perspective. And you know, I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, um, on the other side of the train tracks, if you will. So it wasn't necessarily like the best part of town. And my family knew that. And so they didn't have much. However, I grew up with a single mom and she lived with my grandma for a while. So we stayed there. Um, but they knew that I needed a good education. And so they kind of got money together and found one of the best schools in town, which was a Jewish school by the name of Akiva. And so I was a Black Christian kid that went to a small Jewish school in Youngstown, Ohio. And that was actually, looking back, one of the most formative experiences of my life because I was exposed to not only like different ways that people were living, but like a different religion. And so you're like, how do these people think that their way is the way? And my family thinks that their way is the way. Like, who's actually right? So I think it caused me to be curious early on and like question um, convention and things like that. And so that was interesting. Um, After kindergarten, we moved to Columbus. My mom wanted to get me out of like our neighborhood. It wasn't necessarily the greatest, and so we moved to Columbus. Went to school like a normal kid, played sports, football, track, stuff like that, and then ended up going to Butler University. And so um, it wasn't too far away from home in Indianapolis. Um, I thought I wanted to go to dental school, and I didn't do that. I ended up getting a degree in science, technology, and society, and kind of leaned on the technology instead of the science. And I was selling websites for a little bit. I was going to be implementing them, but ended up selling websites for a funeral home, which was weird. But then I got into HR, and that's kind of like where my career's been. So I'm a lover of people. I'm very curious about people, what drives them, um, how to get the best out of them, and just how to make the world a better place in general. And so I thought I'd be able to help people um, through human resources as kind of an avenue, and that's where I've been since. So that's kind of like my professional kind of background, career, everything like that. Um, Marina, I remember like a couple years back, you were competing in competitions and stuff, and that was
Hmm.
right around the time that I really got into weightlifting. And so I'm not a huge dude. I was like, maybe, I mean, I'm like 5'8", 5'9". But at the time I could bench like 285, which is pretty fucking awesome. Like I was
That's a
proud of
lot.
that. Yeah. And I was considering like getting into competing at some point. I was counting my macros, and that's when I got into nutrition and stuff and like supplements. And I was really looking into kind of like micronutrients and their role in muscle
Mhm.
development, amino acids, things like that. So I mean, still partying, which wasn't good, but at the same time, I was starting to care more about my health. Well, I was like really proud because I was like, oh, like that is an outward sign that you can't buy. You have to earn that. And so I felt as though like it was something that no one could take away from me until January of 2019 when I was in Canada, and I was on a trip with some friends and my wife, and uh, we were snowmobiling, and we were going around Frozen Lake. It was up in Bancroft, Canada, like north in the middle of nowhere. And so we're going around this lake. I mean, if you hop off a snowmobile, you're up to like your mid thigh in snow. So, no trees around, no obstacles. So I think, and so we're, floating these things around the lake. First day, everything's fine. And, we kind of partied and stuff like that. But I'd never been snowmobiling. So I wanted to do it again. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to bed early. I want to wake up. I want to get the first run on the snowmobiles. And then, we can get the day going. I do that. It's a beautiful day. My buddy has 4 snowmobiles. I hop on basically his best one. It was like the fastest one, and going around, and I got uncomfortable on it because I was like, this thing goes way too fast. Like I need to slow down. Not feeling good on this. Not feeling comfortable. Get back on one of the older ones that's a little bit slower. I thought I was good. I felt more comfortable on it. I was going for what was my last lap of the day, and I didn't see that there was a dock in front of me that was covered in snow. Um, the neighbors had built a new dock and they hadn't marked it. You're supposed to put like markers on it to denote that it's there. Um, and before it was too late, I ran into the dock. I had to be going 50, 60, something like that. I was flying. Um, I wake up on my back, looking at the sky, and nothing hurt at the time. And my friends come over, they're all like kind of around me and like, yo, like, you okay? Everything good? I'm like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, all right, well, let's get the day going. And I go to stand up and nothing happens, which like is the most surreal feeling in the world. You can't describe it. It's like you've been standing up your whole life. When you move, your body moves. You don't even really think about it. It's behind thought. And so I intentionally go to move this time and nothing happens. And I didn't understand it. Nothing hurt. Why couldn't I move? And I just sat there, and all I could think was, what did I do? And I just repeated that to myself. And there's this one girl, I didn't even really know her, but she just kind of like pet my face and was just kind of like, yo, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Like, you're fine. Don't worry. And they called the EMS. And luckily, it only took them about 20 minutes to get there, but they couldn't land because, I mean, it was a lake. They were scared of kicking up all the snow. So they had to carry me. They carried me about half or a quarter of a mile through the woods on a stretcher with my friends, who had to snowmobile them out to me. After they do that, we get into an ambulance. They take me to a place where the helicopter could land, fly away, and I'm in surgery getting a spinal decompression infusion. And at this, I'm making jokes. Like I mean, up until this point in my life, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. I like to meet people. Like, nothing really made me sad. I've never struggled with mental health other than the like, what the heck is life and why do I have to work? Like, all day. Like, other than that, it was never a bad thing. I didn't know what low felt like. So I'm joking. I'm like, yo, when you guys are in there, can you, give me a few more inches, make me a little bit taller, like, and I'm getting out of surgery, and like, then I could feel what I could feel, and my neck hurt so bad, and like, I couldn't think of anything but like pressing the morphine button, and I would just press it, and I would just press it as much as I could. And it was so painful, and then reality hit. You have all these doctors coming in, and um, it's like, oh, you got to buy a cushion, you got to do this, like. Um, I'm like, what do you mean? And like, yeah, like you're probably never gonna move again. I'm like, yeah, okay, not really thinking anything of it. I'm like, okay, well, let's get to therapy and recovery and stuff like that. Um, but it's a long road to get there because like everything below my my C7 vertebrae is where I got injured. So everything below essentially my neck is impacted. So my left hand doesn't really work that well. My right hand, at first, I couldn't pull a tissue out of a tissue box because it was so weak, and I couldn't feel where my legs were in space. I couldn't use the restroom. If you touched me, I couldn't feel it. But I was always cold and I was always in pain. And then every couple of hours, they would come in and they try to test your sensation. And so they brush you with a Q-tip to try to see if you can feel light touch, and they poke you with a pin to see if you can feel pain. And they would do this in the middle of my sleep. They would wake me up out of sleep, turn the lights on, start poking me in my face, poking me in my legs, poking me in everything. And so it's either I don't feel it and I realize I can't feel it, and that's not a good feeling, or I'm getting poked by pins, when I was sleeping 2 seconds ago. And anyway, we make it through that. I get to inpatient rehab. I got to be in there for 2 months. And we did 6 days a week of rehab. This whole time I'm thinking I'm going to walk out of that place. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get my muscles strong again. And
So
it
wait,
didn't work.
I don't want to interrupt you, but so they never
Yeah.
said to you, you're paralyzed, or
I
they
didn't hear
always
those
gave you
words.
hope. They
I
always
didn't hear
gave
those
you hope.
words. I don't know if it was hope. I don't know. Like it seemed like
Or
they
they,
just kind of avoided it more than anything. So I didn't hear that I was paralyzed until I got to the U.S. They told me I had a spinal cord injury. They told me like what the implications are, and like some people recover, some people don't. We don't know. It's just a bunch of
okay.
we don't know. It's like we're not sure. Um, and so they don't want to give you a prognosis because some people have recovered. Some people
Yeah.
they're paralyzed for a couple of days. A couple of days later, they're good to go. Other people, it's the rest of their life. Um, and usually, if you don't make it after 2 years, that's kind of what you're going to get back, is what they say. But I didn't hear that, like the actual implications until I got back to the United States and they started telling me about all of that. And it was just like, it was surreal. They just like take you in a room and they just like start showing you videos about adaptive sports that you can play and like telling you all these resources you can get. Cause it's hot and heavy because most people can't be there that long, depending on how their insurance goes. So they're trying to get you all the info they can. But it's such a life change because a week ago, I was fine. My life was good. I was thinking about entering physique competitions. This happens, and I can't lift a 3 pound weight. And they're telling me that I probably can't really play that many sports. Like, if I do, there's like wheelchair rugby, which is like the main one that they go to, and everything else you got to be like, strapped to a golf cart or tied into a fishing boat and like all these things. And like it's nice that people can do that, but it's like it's different than what you want. No one wants that. So um, yeah, it was a long road, and I didn't end up walking out of therapy like I thought I was going to. And I got home, and it was a foreign place where I couldn't reach the cabinets and I couldn't get through the doors. I actually couldn't get into my house because I had steps to get into the house, and uh, my father-in-law built a ramp for me to get in, and so it was crazy. It was a life adjustment, and my life hasn't been the same since.
And you were married at this time.
I was married.
Your
And it
wife
was a
was
new
there.
marriage. Yep. She was actually asleep still, which is wild. They woke her up to let her know about my accident and snowmobiled her out to me. And they actually weren't going to let her on the helicopter because they weren't sure how much she weighed. And it was a small helicopter, and like, we might be over capacity. And she was like, nope, I weighed myself this morning. And she knew exactly how much she weighed in kilograms, which was, I don't know, it just happened. She stepped on the scale. And so she was able to come with me because they actually gave me fentanyl in order to
Wow.
like decrease the pain and everything like that, I guess. And before they cut my clothes off and put me in the helicopter, so I was loopy. I was out of it. If she wasn't there, I don't know what would have happened if I just
Your
had to go by myself.
your parents were not there, right?
Nope,
Your
nope.
mom.
They were in the US. Yeah, but it was just me and
So,
Kelsey, staying with some friends that we had met at a music festival actually. We'd met them a couple years prior and just kind of stayed in touch just through social media and ended up going to a cabin with them and like 14 of their friends that we didn't know.
well, that's cool, but how that that's insane. So I can't even imagine how long were you there in the hospital before you came back?
It was about 2 weeks.
So at that point, like you're not necessarily processing everything and you are at that point extremely filled with hope that you're gonna go to rehab in the US and you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, and my view of the medical system's really changed because I kind of thought, okay, something this serious happens to you, they're going to be drawing your blood labs. We're going to be trying to optimize everything we can to encourage healing. And no, that wasn't the case. Um, they were just kind of like, yeah, we can give you some painkillers. That's about it. Like we didn't really, there wasn't really much else in the way of like what I thought would be this full on, uh, all hands on deck. Let's get him healed as much as we can. No talk about nutrition at any point throughout my stay or anything like that. It was weird.
So how about like the mental portion of it? Did anybody come and try to like talk to you? As I mean, I'm assuming in the US somebody did. You tried, right? Like
Yep.
so cuz like how I'm imagining it is you come home, you're going to rehab, you're trying to deal with just getting into your house and getting to your bed and getting a glass of water. And at that point, I can only imagine that you are still like your mind is still kind of focused on like, okay, how are we going to make this work? Like, the physical aspects of things, but like mentally, where were you at that point?
Mentally, I was still hopeful because, like, when I got to the US, I was actually inpatient rehab. I have to stay there full time. So I was in the hospital again for, that 2 months. And I was hopeful. I had friends contacting me. A buddy of mine, Mark, actually would send me quotes each day. And there's like, different quotes about like staying strong and, having hope, determination, just things like that. And it made a huge difference. I had people stopping by and just like, there's so much going on between that and therapy. Like I would be doing therapy from basically 8 a.m. to like 6 p.m. And then you eat food and you try to get some sleep. You can't really sleep, but I wasn't really thinking about it that much until like more time went on with not much recovery. Like as a week would go by, I'd be like, man, it hasn't really changed that much. Like what's going on? Like why am I still like this? And so then it slowly started to wear on me. Where it really got me, and I mean, it's awkward, but they start talking to you about how sex is different, and they take you into a room and they show you a video and they try to be optimistic about it, but the reality is, for a while, things don't work the same, and for
Yeah.
some people, they don't ever come back, and they are just very. Uh, there's no sugarcoating it, and I get it. They're doctors. They're not trying to like, you know, they're not there to make you feel good, I guess. Like I would argue that maybe they should change that, but um, it it was rough. It was rough on the mental after that conversation, and then also about like with weightlifting and everything like that, and um, I don't know. It didn't sit well, but it was worse when I got home. Um, that's when I got like what I would consider depressed.
So I've been talking to a lot of people about like stress and anxiety and depression. And I think everybody kind of has their own definition, especially of anxiety. But so when you're going to now kind of talk about depression for us, do you have like a way that you can describe it for yourself and how it felt for you?
Yeah, it was an all-encompassing doom. Uh, I could associate nothing with happiness, and I didn't understand it because that's not how I was before. Um, I would look outside and I would see squirrels running on trees, and I'd be like, I like squirrels, but I'd be like, these stupid animals get to run around and play in the trees, and here I am stuck in a chair. Why is that? And it's not. I'm not proud of it, but I would see people out when we'd be out and about in the community, who, based on my superficial judgments, um, didn't really take care of their body. Perhaps they were overweight or something like that. And I'd be like, you have no fucking clue what miracle you have and what blessing you have bestowed upon you. And you're going to treat yourself like this. You're going to eat like shit like this. And I got mad at a lot of people in my life too. Just at some of the habits that they had and just things like that. I was just angry. I was sad. I didn't see any hope, um, which is a terrible place to be because you have this vision of your future. Like, you're gonna maybe have kids, you're gonna, travel, you're gonna, do these things in life. And I didn't see a real world possibility of any of those things happening. And being like a hyper logical person, I'm like, well, if I can't get to any of the things that I think will make me happy, what is the point? Why would I want to continue? And that is the first time, and actually the only time in my life, I contemplated ending my life. Because if I can't run, I can't play, I can't golf, I can't work out, I can't travel, I can't, hang out with my friends in the same way. What is the point? And I didn't see a way. So it was just like a dark cloud, uh, angst, a despair, and I don't know. I was sad, angry, all the bad emotions. I was all those.
Just constantly. So for how
Yeah.
long do you think you experienced this doom and this like hopelessness?
About a year.
About a year?
Um, yep. I was fortunate in that, like, I worked for Honda, and they had a very generous uh, medical leave program, and so I was able to get 2 years off of work. And the first year, a lot of it was in the hospital and stuff, and then I came home. I was trying to adjust, um, but I'd say like a couple months into being home, that's when I was like, man, I don't know if I want to live anymore. I had a buddy a while back that told me, uh, no problem is unique. Like, your life is unique, but any problem you've had, someone else has probably had it, and they probably wrote it down in a book. And I was like, let me just start reading. Let me see what other religions say. Let me see what other people who've gone through hard things say. Because, like, this is one of the hardest things that can happen to a person. But there are other hard things. How do people get through these? Um, so I started really exploring that, and every day I would go sit on the back porch and I would read a book for just hours. And I read and I read, and Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl was one of the books that like really changed my perspective. And it's about a guy who experiences the Holocaust. He loses basically all of his family, and he comes to the conclusion ultimately that you bestow your own meaning on your life. And when you can't change your circumstances, you're challenged to change yourself. And that sat with me. And then there's another idea that, when he's in the prison camps, he was like, uh, to paraphrase, essentially, good luck can come out of nowhere, for the individual. Um, you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know what it's going to look like, but one day it could happen, and you must live to see that day. So why not continue and potentially see that day? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like, who knows what can happen? I didn't know that I was going to get paralyzed. So, I mean, how foolish would it be if I end my life and then 3 months later they find the cure and it was something, super simple, or like, I don't know. It's like, you come to find out you eat 4 oranges in a row and, all of a sudden you're good to go. Like, what if it's something like that? So, um, those little nuggets kind of built up this, again, curiosity in my mind that made me go, well, if it's as bad as this and I feel as if there's no hope, it can only get better, right? If it's at the place where it's the worst, the only option is for it to get better. And it has. in ways that I haven't been able to explain, um, that I couldn't foresee, and that I would have never been able to convince myself of when I was feeling that way. And so that's why I am so adamant about mental health these days. Um, you should never give up. I don't think you got to keep going, and you just got to keep going. It'll get
So
better.
it's so interesting for me because I've pondered this thought for years is, are we born with positive or negative, like, souls, if you could say it? So like what it sounds like to me is before this accident, you were always super positive.
Yep.
And after the accident, this intense depression sets over you. So if you weren't that person before, do you think you would have had that same shift to allow yourself to keep going? Like, what was that shift? Because I wrote down, I like that you said that the challenge to change yourself, right? So I've been learning a lot about like changing your thoughts and how to rewire your brain. I think I even sent you a podcast a while back.
Joe
Um,
Dispenza.
yes, about
Yeah.
it. So I think it's just so interesting. Like, what do you think it was for you? Is it that you were born with the ability to keep going and to not give up?
I think my disposition was one that uh, favored perhaps me being able to turn it around, but I don't think that it's out of reach for everyone. I think that it's possible. I think you're malleable. I believe in brain neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
um, and I think that it's through exploring yourself that you figure out what that route is. Like, I don't think anyone can give you a prescription for it. I think that's what's hard about it because we all want a menu or steps to follow. However, your experiences and your traumas and the way that you perceive them and how they've impacted you are all going to be different, all going to be unique. And so only you can figure out how to heal yourself of those traumas. Only you can figure out what's going to convince you that maybe it's worth sticking around. Maybe it's worth having a little bit of hope. And maybe it's just one more fucking day. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're not like, oh, I'm gonna stick around for my whole life. It's like, go to bed tonight, wake up one more day. You do that 365 times. That's a year. Sometimes you got to break it down into those little bite-sized pieces. And I think that is a good segue into kind of how I did it, because it wasn't just one moment. Um, it was a series of moments. It was a series of thoughts. It was a constant iteration of and reiteration of what I felt to be true. And I think it takes challenging your beliefs. I think it's very uncomfortable. And so, I mean, to really answer your question directly, I think some people are born uh, with a tendency maybe towards happiness or unhappiness based on like genetic predisposition and like epigenetics. Like, I believe that trauma from the mother is often passed to the child. However, I think that you have a huge influence in that. I think that you can change that. We all can.
So what was it for you? Obviously reading. What else? What else would you say that helped you get over that hump?
I'd say reading was a huge one. I also did therapy, so like mental therapy. I still go every Tuesday. Just talking it out, and sometimes I'm just talking to myself. She's not like I'm just in there, just like spewing my thoughts. Other times she's helping me think through things, and it's great to have an objective third party who won't judge, who doesn't necessarily have a stake other than helping you think through things. I think that was hugely beneficial. And like finding the right person for that, I think was beneficial. Um, you talked, I think maybe before we got on about like a holistic approach. Like, I think what you consume mentally matters as well. So I had to cut out all things that didn't suit me, and it was in an extreme way. Um, I got obsessed with like research and stuff. How do I heal my spinal cord? How can I do this? But then eventually I was like, this is kind of toxic. I need to cut out things that make me think about my condition and focus on things that make me happy. So there's a very extreme filtering of content.
I
Um,
agree with you.
yeah,
100%. I've recently, I mean, I've heard people say all the time, surround yourself with positive people. Well, okay. The news, I've realized that it's something so simple, but if I watch not the local news in the morning, I am triggered. I
yep.
can't help that, right? So what can I do? I can just not watch the news. Like, I know that sounds um crazy, but that's what I have to do. And that's okay.
I'm the
But
same
I
way.
agree.
I don't watch the news. Um, if it's important enough, I hear about it, and the things I want to know about, I seek out. So
Yeah.
that's it. Like it's really shaping your environment to um, encourage the things that you want out of life. So, and that's your physical environment as well. Like if I don't want to lay around all day, then I have to maybe make spaces where I can do other things besides lay around. If I want to paint, maybe I need to set up an easel in the corner of my room that's easily accessible with my paintbrushes already there, so I don't have any excuses. So that was another big part of it. It was like, sorry, shaping my environment to uh, suit what I wanted out of life. Even putting pictures up on the wall to make me happier, and uh, I would have quotes on my phone, like on the background. I'd change the quote every so often on my lock screen. Just a small reminder, be happy, keep going. Um, Why not me? It's a poem I wrote actually. Um, I would read that to myself, and I don't know. It's just like all those little things I think together. Like maybe building your own system is the takeaway.
Yeah. Man, it's so interesting. One of the other things that I always talk about is kind of, for me personally, physical health came first. It was something that was measurable to me, right? Like, we wear these watches. We can measure how many steps we take. We can measure how much food we're putting into our bodies. We can measure the amount of weight that we're lifting. Are we getting stronger, right? We can measure VO2 max, our BMI, our body fat percentage, our blood pressure. Like, so physical health is easy for us to dive into because we're humans, and I don't know what it is about tracking things that make things more concrete. And I think that once people kind of master in a lot of ways the physical aspects of health, then they kind of start moving on into maybe mental health or spiritual health. And my husband and I always talk about how life is like a ladder, and everybody has to reach every single rung on that ladder. So sometimes people skip and then they end up going backwards because they still kind of have to touch every single step. And, you know, there's some people that never get to the physical aspects of it. And it's hard for me, I mean, to imagine that people really completely skip it, but who knows? So for you, it was one of those things that it seems like you were diving so deep into the physical, and then it was literally taken away from you. So it's almost like you were like excelled into the spiritual and the mental side of life. How do you think about that? Like, you know, kind of everything happens for a reason, and it puts us there for some higher power. How do you feel about that?
I think it was the ultimate transition, and in a lot of ways, I needed it. Um, I was very much of the work hard, play hard mindset. So, we'd party, we'd go to music festivals, we'd do all these things. I wanted to build a career, and I wasn't sure what that looked like exactly, but I was probably just going to play the corporate rat race game for a while and maybe try some side businesses here and there and not be super serious about it. But like you said, like I had focused on my body and I knew that when I ate good, I felt good. And that translated into the spiritual because when I wasn't feeling good, I was like, all right, maybe I can tweak my nutrition a little bit and at least get those things right. If I give myself a good night's sleep, if I give myself, a balanced meal with, all the nutrients I need, maybe take a multivitamin if you can't eat as much. Um, those things took out all the other factors that could cloud my day. And that's when I could understand more about my feeling. Like it was more pure. Cause like sometimes you wake up, you're like, am I in a bad mood because life's bad or did I only get 4 hours of sleep last night? What is it really? So I was able to then gauge more effectively, track, like you're saying, my feelings, which is, kind of a way to look at them. I would see how they would fluctuate throughout the day. Um, I would see how they would fluctuate like week to week. And I would just kind of not super journal it, but just keep track of it a little bit. Just like, oh, how am I feeling this week? What did I do this week that made me feel better versus last week? And then I could point to those things that I was changing, and then pull those levers harder if I needed to. So I think that was big. But like you said, I think it is like a ladder because I feel like without that foundation, maybe I wouldn't have been able to get to the mental place because I would feel so down and tired and hungover. Like I don't drink anymore actually. Just as a choice I made, I just see the benefit not outweighing the cost at this point, just because how hard it is for me to get to the restroom and just the toll it takes on your body and stuff. And man, remembering everything is wild. Remembering conversations you had, never being hungover, not wasting a whole day. I didn't realize how much time I was wasting just like quote unquote recovering. You waste, I mean, the worse, sorry, the older I got, the worse it got. You go out Saturday night, maybe you're not feeling right until Tuesday. And so I don't
So
know.
it's
Now I
it's
don't have
funny.
that.
It's funny that you say that because I am 100% going through all of that now. There was actually a time where I started to like wonder if I had alcohol issues. And I wouldn't do anything stupid. I wouldn't drive drunk. I wouldn't like it wasn't anything that again was measurable. It was all in here that I would wake up the next day and this all happened after I gave birth. So after 30 years old. And I'm like, there's no way that alcohol, 2 glasses of wine, is causing me this much anxiety. There's no way that it's causing me to wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and not be able to fall back asleep. Well, Ryan, there was a way because that's exactly what it was doing. And
You know,
I'm currently like at that point now where I no longer need to drink. I'm no longer that like anxious that I need to have a drink. And I'm now at the point that when I do have a drink, it's once in a while, but then the next day I'm always feeling it. So I'm literally getting to the point that I think I'm gonna have to just stop completely. Like I can't do red wine. I can't do it's just like the white wine on ice. And I'm still, struggling through that. But I
yeah.
definitely agree with you.
What was the trigger for you that kind of signaled a change and kind of how did you go through that as well, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So when I got pregnant, this at this point, I think the company was in 2019, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the company was about 3 to 4 years old, and we were struggling a lot financially, obviously, before I got pregnant. So when I got pregnant, I had to stop drinking, and my husband did not quit drinking, obviously. And I kind of watched him and realized, like, wow, he drinks a lot. And then I'm like, it's so weird that I'm recognizing this now. Well, the reason I'm recognizing it now is because I'm sober. So
Yeah.
after I gave birth to my daughter, I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Like, I'm just going to drink again. And it's going to make him like way better to me. Like, I'm going to be able to deal with his alcoholism, basically. And I started to try to drink again, and I got severe postpartum depression. And I got put on medicine, and it kind of was just so on and off. I was still kind of drinking, and then I was looking at him and hated him for drinking, and then I would drink so that I didn't hate him so much. And it was only after we moved to Florida that it got to the point that I realized, I'm blaming him right now and I'm still drinking. So the first thing I have to do is I have to stop drinking. Maybe I will hate him less if I fully stop drinking. So I did that for a period of time, and then it got to the point that me and him kind of started. I told him, I'm like, I can't do this. So if you're going to keep drinking, I'll still love you. You're still going to be part of Mila's life, but I'm done. Like, I can't, like, I was still being influenced by him, I felt. And it got to the point that he had a health scare and he's actually sober now. And that too has been extremely difficult because this person that I knew for 10 years is now gone. Boom. And he's a new person. So now he doesn't drink and now I'm like sober, but I can have a glass here and there, but I'm still feeling that anxiety, the brain fog afterwards. So I think I'm very much in a transition period. And I think if we talk in a year, we'll kind of see where that goes. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know what it is about our bodies changing kind of as we get older. Yeah, I just read an article about how women can go into like the premenopause at age 35, and I turned 35 in January. So
Yeah.
there's that.
It's funny, like, I think most people when they get on the health journey, maybe start with macros. And so,
Yeah.
kind of looking at those big nutrients. Then you get into micronutrients and stuff like that, supplements and things. Now we're getting to the age where it's like, hormones, like you don't even think about
Yep,
that whole system and, that being balanced and everything. So it is a super interesting transition.
it is. And it kind of happens to everybody. And I mean, that's what I'm trying to kind of accomplish here is I'm trying to see, because when you have businesses to run, you're doing the same thing. You've got your side businesses, you're still working at Honda and HR. So sometimes we get stuck. You actually talk to a lot of people, so I feel like you're not. But I'm like stuck in my own little world and looking at just who's in it. And I just want to get out there and like explore and kind of once we get older, I think we realize that we don't have all the answers and that there's other people around us that are, I don't not better than us, but have experienced things that we can too experience. And it's just great to be able to hear other people's perspectives and how they got there.
For sure. And I think a lot of it has to do with getting comfortable with yourself first, which like takes a long time because
Yeah.
it seems like you go through this period of school where you're trying to be the same as everyone. You want to be accepted, you want to be like in the in groups and things like that. Then after that, you're kind of on this journey of like, oh, well, I don't have those people to identify with anymore. What do I like to do? And then you almost go back to like being a little kid. Like when you're super little, you didn't care what someone did. You're like, oh, you got a ball? You want to play? Like, all right, let's kick it around. And it's almost like you start playing again as an adult because you're
Yeah.
curious again about what other people are into, and you kind of want to talk about what you've been into because you get extreme into your hobbies and stuff. It's really cool.
It is cool. And I hope that everyone gets there. I was actually just this morning creating a post on identity. And have you ever read any of Jay Shetty's books?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna
Kelsey
send
was telling
you.
me about one. You have to tell me
I
about
want
them.
to
Yeah.
send you one. But anyways, in this book, it's called Think Like a Monk. He discusses like what our identity is and what it should be versus what it is. What it should be is we're looking in a mirror, and that reflection that we see back is our identity. But in today's society, how the mirror is often covered by dust. And that dust is other people's opinions and other people's views of us. So when we're trying to see ourselves, what we're seeing actually is a distorted view based off of the layer of dust of what everybody else thinks. So, what people believe is their identity is what they think that other people think about them.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
this like, this pseudo self that we are not being true to who we are, not asking, what do we like? What are my values? What are my morals? Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important for everybody to do and to get to know themselves, like you said.
Yeah, 'cause you do kind of define yourself in the context of your relationships, which is really weird. And I think you do have to shed that in order to grow. Because I heard this thought recently. I forget where it even came from, but this gentleman was talking about how when his belief is that when you think, you create. And so, you get what you think about. And I tend to lean toward that direction as well. And he's like, it's super daunting because you have these habit patterns of thought and you're trying to change them, but you're always going to be chasing them because they're, usually kind of emotional. And that's before your logical brain. So you're always going to be trying to rationalize them and go back and edit. He's like, well, if you change your self identity, you change what habits or what thoughts become habits. So if you immerse yourself in maybe new groups that are involved in what you want to be doing, you start to identify with that and you think of yourself as that rather than, your old relationships, and thus you can shed your old patterns. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's super cool. So now that we've went on a tangent, um, a good one, um, what would you want anybody to know that is going through a situation where they feel a level of depression and, like how you described it, doom? What would you want somebody to know?
I would say don't ever compare your trauma or your hurt. It's easy to do that. And um, it's not to any good end. Like on Viktor Frankl's book, he says, uh, suffering is like a gas, essentially. No matter how thick or how thick the gas is going to permeate the room and fill the room completely, just like it fills the person completely. So it may not, when you're young, like, so you go through a breakup and it feels so terrible and you think it's the worst thing in the world, and you have people that kind of belittle you for it because they're like, oh, you're young, you don't understand like what the world is actually like. But to you it feels like it's the worst thing ever. So don't compare, because I think that um, kind of minimizes what you're going through. I think it's real when you're going through those things, but know that change is the only constant in life. And if things can get that bad, there has to be the possibility of something that is that good, because we live in a polar universe. You can't have sound without silence, can't have hot without cold. Therefore, you can't have good without bad to define them. So if you feel that bad, equal and opposite of good is possible. So just
I
know that and just
absolutely
keep
love
going.
that. I love that. That's such a good way to say it and to think about it.
That's what's up.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you.